Modern dating has become very gay coded, and I know how that sounds, but hear me out. If you're attempting to use dating apps to find lasting love, then you're pretty much going to a drive-thru for a 5-star meal. And I don't make this video to bash or villainize gay people in any way. I think the problems we're seeing in modern dating has plagued that community more than any other. I'm going to try to lay out why we're facing the same problems. One of the most glaring reasons being that the apps that we're using to facilitate romance were never built to achieve what we were looking for. They weren't made to connect you to your soulmate. They were never really meant to foster lasting connection. Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, whatever is on your phone right now, all of them were built from the blueprint of the biggest gay hookup app ever created, Grindr. And if you know anything about anything, Grindr is not about hustle culture or finding your future long-lasting partner. It wasn't built for intentional connection, more like impulsive ones. It built a platform that encouraged fast, visual, immediate decisions based on how you look, what you are offering, and your geolocation. But somehow, every major player in the dating space looked at this model and said,
yeah, this is definitely what the straight market is asking for.
Just think about that. You're trying to find your future wife or husband on a platform that encourages no strings attached. And I think using Grindr as the foundation has been detrimental to modern dating and connection in general. When you look at the stats and people's sentiment towards these apps, it's not great, especially when you look at Gen Z. They're feeling burnt out more than any other generation when it comes to these apps, and they're showing it in their actual behavior. In 2025, about 43% of women and 51% of men didn't go on a single date the entire year. They didn't meet up for coffee, they didn't go to grab drinks, they just stayed home separately. And that could be for a multitude of reasons. I think the main one being that people kind of feel like there's no other option to find a partner if you're not on these apps, leaving you two options, and that's to play the game or to opt out entirely. You can see that in the crazy gender imbalance that these apps have. I'm going to pick stats from Tinder, but this is true for almost every other app. 75% of the Tinder user base are men. 3/4 of the entire app are dudes, which means before you've even registered, you're already fighting for the attention of a quarter of the users. And if you talk to any of the women that are on these apps, they don't want to be there. And with this imbalance comes distorted realities, I like to call it, where people's vision of what they deserve and what they can actually achieve are distorted by the amount of matches they're able to get. You have about 64% of women on these apps saying that they refuse to settle for less than what they actually want, but out of the 42% that actually go on dates, they were all dissatisfied with the people they were meeting. You see this problem that arises where more options lead to higher standards but still end up with worse outcomes. The abundance of choice doesn't really create satisfaction, it creates this constant leaving the door open for a better option to walk through. You're only one swipe away from finding what you actually want, so why settle? And while this has tended to inflate standards for women and lead to more disappointment, for men, this creates a constant cycle of rejection. The lack of matches, conversations, or any real dates that come from these creates a deep insecurity that most of them can't really understand because they've never dealt with it up until now. I mean, I think the match rate for men is like 5%, while women get like a 44% match rate. And out of the 5% that men get, less than 2.5% will ever turn into actual dates. They'll just be failed talking stages or never talk at all. This creates a scenario where men feel like they're being boxed out of everything. They already have worse job outcomes, they're not going to school, they're falling behind economically, and then to be rejected by the other gender endlessly at your lowest makes everything feel that much heavier. And I'm not trying to overemphasize the effects that it has on men, but it is a little weird that men are dealing with the brunt of the rejection and don't have a friend group or social circle to turn to. It's kind of like all your walls are caving in at once, but it's kind of the whole basis of what the modern world is preying on. The desperation and the skewed view of the world is how they profit so heavily off of the sad state of relations. Even in a time where everybody knows dating apps don't work, they can still pull in nearly $6 billion a year, paywalling every feature, even making you pay to be seen. Now, here's the part of the conversation that I think a lot of people don't touch on and ties back to the Grindr connection. Some of the videos I watched on this topic to get a general feel of how people feel about dating led to a reoccurring talking point about third wave feminism. You know, creators would talk about the connection between dating apps, third wave feminism, the rise of sexual liberation, hookup culture being viewed as empowerment and the idea of women reclaiming themselves on their own term. And there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of it is true in a sense, but I saw a lot of people never include the influence of the gay liberation movement, even though third wave feminism and queer theory pulls heavily from it. The ideas around gender fluidity, that binary categories aren't fixed, and that masculine and feminine are largely constructed performances that we do. And while people will spend time debating how deep that influence goes, what isn't debatable is the pressure that all of that has placed on the modern dating market. You're trying to have two different dynamics operate in the same infrastructure. Can't take the formula for a gay cruising app just built on the ideology of hookup culture and market it towards straight people or even gay people who are looking for long-term relationships, maybe even marriage. If you do, you get exactly what we have now. You bring people in by selling them the hope of lasting connection, but only provide them with quick temporary fixes that never last, making sure they have to keep coming back because without the app, they don't know how to meet people at all. This has never been more true, especially in a post-COVID world. The way your parents or grandparents met is harder to come by now. People in real life have changed. The dynamics have changed, and it feels like everybody is walking on eggshells. And because of this, talking feels impossible and online connection feels like the only route. The issues we're seeing in modern dating were the same issues that the gay community was raising right after Grindr was created. Before Tinder even existed, around 2009, 2010, people on those apps noticed that they were being fetishized and saw that the complex relationships were being reduced into quick, easy explanations or decisions. The people who were looking for real connection started to feel excluded from their own community and spaces, all because they did not subscribe to the hookup culture, but that representation was baked so deeply into their identity that opting out meant being pushed out. They talked about how these hookup apps devalued them to whatever position they were in the bedroom, and in some ways reinforced the same patriarchal dynamics that third wave feminism tries to destroy, the extreme feminine or extreme masculine, which is ironic because these were the same rigid boxes that people were fighting to get out of in the first place. And this same dynamic has carried over into the straight relationships. I mean, it has always been a complaint, don't get me wrong. We see this dehumanizing language now more than ever, even in a liberated society. And that's because of the foundation. Everybody gets reduced. Men get reduced to what they can provide. Women get reduced to what they look like. And nobody gets to be a person worth knowing or understanding. And the thing is that people realize that the dating apps are doing this, but they're confused about what is being offered to them. The problem with having so many options built on the same groundwork is that it gives you an illusion of choice, and you see that especially in the dating app scene. When people realize that Tinder isn't working, they go ahead and try Hinge, and when Hinge isn't working, they try Bumble, and when Bumble isn't working, they try Plenty of Fish. And in reality, all of these are the same company. It's pretty much one company that owns all these different apps that are promoting the same thing. If you're not aware of the Match group, this is the group that is pretty much ruining your dating life. They're the reason that when you uninstall one app and download the other, thinking that you're getting a different result, you're really just moving to the different floor of the same building, and all of them profit off you the same way by feeding off of your loneliness, your hope, selling you these imaginary social boosts. After you've been through this cycle enough times, people come to the same conclusions, and this was only reinforced when I had a conversation with my sister recently. She told me about something called the pink pill or decentering men, and it's basically red pill but for women. You can take every Andrew Tate talking point you've ever heard and just flip it but repackage it for a female audience. The pink pill or decentralizing men tends to reframe relationships not as something worth pursuing but as a tool of the patriarchy used to keep women down. Don't get married, don't play into your traditional roles, value yourself over anybody else, and finances are the key to happiness. And just like the red pill, there's a lot of grifting in this space. When I fell into this rabbit hole, I saw a video about one of the most prominent pink pill voices right now getting engaged.
MJ Gray just got engaged, and I love it. For those of you who are not chronically online, MJ Gray is a woman who has built a profitable platform on TikTok for man-hating and standing against the patriarchal regime and its systems, such as marriage.
I personally disagree with the entire construct of marriage. I believe that marriage signifies the ownership of women, and I disagree with it as a concept as a whole. I don't like being in relationships. Why would I want to get married? Marriage is work. Having children is work. It's not what I want with my life. Respect the fact that I don't personally want that. At the Jones until I die, bitch. feel like you shouldn't get married. I really wish women would stop getting married. Marriage is an antiquated idea that I believe oppresses women.
This is the same woman who was telling her audience that marriage was damn near slavery. But after gaining enough internet clout and monetizing the anger for long enough, she did exactly what she told women to stay away from. This is nothing new. That's just how content creators turn resentment into revenue. Underneath all the grifting, people are talking about these things because they hit on something that's real. The dating market is broken. They're not wrong about that. The problem is that they're taking advice from people who are consistently losing in it. I say losing because a lot of these voices are speaking from a place of not finding love or connection the way they wanted and having to compromise themselves to get it in a different form. You can look max, you can improve how you're perceived, but that only gets you more matches and hookups. It doesn't fill in the missing piece for a lasting connection, and when the loudest voices in the rooms are the ones who haven't figured that out, it leaves everyone more disillusioned and less able to understand the other gender. There is an experiment from the 1970s I keep coming back to when I think of where all of this is heading. You may have heard about it before. It's called Universe 25. A scientist named John Calhoun built a perfect world for rats. They had unlimited food, all the space they could want, no predators in sight, not a disease to be caught, and no real struggle to endure. Even with all those protections, the colony still managed to collapse. The males stopped competing, they stopped pursuing females altogether. They really just stopped doing anything that required effort or had any risk associated, leading them just to eat and groom themselves endlessly, leaving a wandering pack of healthy looking but completely empty male rats. Calhoun would go on to call these the beautiful ones, perfect on the outside but checked out on the inside. And the female rats went through their own version of collapse. When the males withdrew, the females left behind had to fend for themselves. They became more isolated, aggressive, they stopped reproducing, and eventually the beautiful males and the isolated females made up a majority of the entire population. So when you place two different genders in the same weird environment, you kind of get the same outcome. And Calhoun would call this the spiritual death. Social collapse that showed up in the rat colony happened way before the actual physical one that showed in the numbers. The pink pill and the red pill are still a minority ideology, but if the trends keep going the direction it's going, we're walking straight into the Universe 25. We haven't achieved utopia yet, but somehow we've already run out of reasons to believe that the other gender is worth pursuing. And that's brought up another side of the Universe 25 that I think the male rats understood as everything was provided for them, and that's the idea that masculinity somewhere in that timeline has become a liability, leading them to become the beautiful ones. I think in the Western world this isn't really hard to see. Many people feel like there's really no place left for it in the modern world. The narrative around straight men has gotten so overwhelmingly negative that women have started to self-select away from it as a protective instinct, and I'm not here to blame them for that. Andrew Tate and people like him went on the longest run in the 2010s and early 2020s telling men that women are lesser. We saw the rise of incel ideology, the black pill, and even though we thought it was only guys being influenced by this, women were watching the whole time. Not because they were looking for it, trying to understand or join the group, but because it was everywhere. The guy friends reposted the quotes, the situationships they had, the first dates they went on, everything pointed out to males being influenced by the red pill. And it wasn't just the outright misogyny that did all the damage, it was the exposure of the simp. For all of this, I think women genuinely believe that men who were doing everything they could for them were doing it off of passion, and while some were, the red pill revealed that a lot of that behavior was transactional. Guys were performing softness or generosity to get an end, and once women saw that, the whole performance became suspect and they didn't trust it. And eventually women got tired of trying to figure it out. And when women get tired, they have one advantage in the dating market that men don't really have, and that's power. Mainly the power to refuse and select, and usually that power will be wielded to make them feel safer. The safe option stopped being the masculine one, it became the performative one. The guy who signaled that he's been trained, almost domesticated. The type of guy that you can read completely before he even says a word. He has the matcha in hand, the sweater tied around the waist, and a book about feminist theory under his his arm. A complete shift away from the alpha male that Andrew Tate and those alike were trying to prop up. They saw what was being offered and they just recorrected the market. And as women pushed away from the alpha male archetype, the question became what would take its place. And from then on, the performative male has kind of been building their identity with what's going to be next. This is not to demonize performative men. I mean, you like what you like. I can't prove that it's an act, but the faces dominating the culture right now are softer, more androgynous. You're seeing things like painted nails, eyeliner, and silhouettes that blur the lines on purpose. Again, not saying anything wrong with that. People can present however they want. This isn't about me telling anyone how to live, but what this shift has done to the average straight man who doesn't fit the mold is leave him with nowhere to stand. The identity that he's holding on to is too old for the new standards, and the archetype he was told his whole life was desirable is at an all-time low in terms of demand. And the new one, androgynous, emotionally fluid, and aesthetically refined, wasn't the one that he was raised up to go towards. It wasn't even really an option in most households. And with men earning less, graduating less, and building wealth slower, traditional masculine values of provider and protector has been undercut by women outpacing them economically. And the alternative that is being offered to them is a completely different version of themselves that they don't even know how to build. They're essentially caught between two worlds. They're not able to hit the requirements of the old standard, and their identity is so internalized that it's hard to adopt a new one. And when all of these line up, you start to see people just opting out in general. It's not always with anger. They don't always turn to being radicalized. Sometimes they just have a realization that the world that they're living in doesn't have space for them. And this is true for the pink or the red pill. When you talk about the average guy, the non-alpha male, the non-top earner, they basically discount them as not worthy of happiness or that they don't matter. And the culture surrounding this just kind of takes it as a joke. I mean, we live in a time where women on social media are saying that having a boyfriend is cringy, that real men don't exist anymore. And it wasn't that long ago that we had the man versus bear debate, asking women if they would rather be left in the woods with a man or a bear, and an overwhelming amount of them chose the bear. And that is a funny moment, don't get me wrong, but it's just a signal for a larger change. Women would genuinely rather be in a relationship with a femboy than a guy who's actually presenting as traditional. And that's because traditional is threatening to the new order that's coming. The scene that we have built entirely on apparent and surface level contact requires you to either conform with whatever they're asking for or get filtered out before anybody even knows who you are. This isn't just happening to men. I know I'm a guy, so I'm going to focus on that, but women are living through their own version of this. The demonizing of men and the constant messaging that they're unsafe, unreliable, and not worth the risk has forced a lot of women into independence that they didn't necessarily choose, having to be self-sufficient not because they want to, but because trusting someone felt like much more of a gamble. And just like incels that are involuntary celibate, a lot of women in the decentralizing men movement are celibate by choice, but the more they talk about it, it's because they can't find a partner that they're willing to be with. And this ideology is just kind of more exhausting than it is empowering. And what you end up with is both sides who are wanting deeper, meaningful connection, but don't want to play the game that is set up for them, because again, it's not set up for them at all. From the culture to the apps to the influencers who are monetizing their frustration, everybody is benefiting off of your pain. When you look at the trends, it's not hard to see why. As we head towards a more single population that doesn't value marriage or children as much as before, that becomes your taxable population. A lonely person can be made a consumer pretty easily. Whether they're paying for premium subscriptions, solo travel, self-improvement courses, therapy, or just spending more because there's nobody else to spend it on, the single economy is going to be worth trillions. While marriage and family formation cut into that, so do genuine lasting connections. A population that can't find each other is a population that keeps spending trying to feel okay being alone. And in the boardroom, they know that this is true, but they won't ever tell you that. But this is one of the topics where every solution requires somebody to take accountability first, and I don't know who's going to be first to do that. I've talked about this before on my channel with my own experience, and I'll say it clearly, I think standards are overinflated. I think the access these apps give make it harder to build anything real, and at the same time, I think the pressure pushes people into becoming a version of themselves that isn't really them. But I also hear women when they say that they're just being lusted over and not taken seriously, and there's a reason we got here. The president didn't just appear out of nowhere. You can view this video as just me blaming blaming corporations, and you probably wouldn't be far off, but I think underneath it all, there's a bigger question that nobody really wants to sit with. Philosophers from Plato to Nietzsche spent their entire lives warning that love was dangerous, that it made people blind, uncompromising, and irrational, and time has kind of vindicated them. But the question I keep asking myself is that because we refuse to let love evolve, or have we gone so far from what love actually is that what we're chasing looks nothing like partnership anymore? Because I think that's where we really are at this moment. Are the people we date real people with their own emotions and their own story, or have they just become props, something to complete the image we have of ourselves in our head? You know, something to post to check that box for us, validate our identity that we've already locked in on being. Because if our partners are real people, which they're gonna be unless AI takes over dating as well, then both sides of this matter. And if we want to pretend like they don't, then prepare to live in a world filled with chuds and femcels that will never see eye to eye and will be constantly trying to replace each other at every chance they get. That's not the future that I want to live in, but maybe I'm being too doomer about the dating situation. I will admit this is one of the parts of life that I don't see having a easy solution. Meaningful connection is out there, but the ways we're trying to navigate it currently make no sense. But maybe that's just how I'm viewing it. If you disagree or have a different take on what I've said in this video, let me know down below in the comments. I do read the comments. Do you think that dating is in a good spot? And if you don't, what are the changes you would like to see to make it feel more humane? If you haven't already, like and subscribe to join the thread. And with that being said, thank you for tuning in. Until next time.
I don't wanna ever lose you. You know that I got to lose.